Hello, 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 hello. Checking the mics. Hello, checking microphone.
Good evening, Dr. Ravi.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening, Professor. Just wanted someone to let me know on the logo. Is it inverted? Is it fine?
No, fine. It's fine.
All right. Okay.
So not to look similar, I'm using a natural background.
All right.
So I just realized that I unmuted myself only now. So good evening, Mr.
So good evening, Professor. You're talking to yourself, Anna.
Yeah.
Hi, Niharika, all set?
Good evening, Dr. Anirudh.
Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our esteemed audience. I'm Niharika Ramprakash, and I'm happy to host you today, a special day, yet another milestone, the launch of the new academic unit, Alliance School of Liberal Arts. I'd like to welcome Mr. Abhay Chebi, Pro-Chancellor of Alliance University, Dr. Anubha Singh, Vice Chancellor, Mr. Chetan Bhagat, a well-known novelist and columnist, Dr. Anirudh Sridhar, Associate Dean of Alliance School of Liberal Arts, registrars and pro-vice chancellors, deans of the various schools, HODs, and faculty of all departments, staff, students, alumni, recruiting partners, parents, media, and all other invitees. We will commence today's program with an invocation to invoke an auspicious start and new learning experiences.
या कुन्देन्दु तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रान्विता या वीणां वरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेत पद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युत शङ्कर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा पूजिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा।
I'd now like to invite Dr. Anubha Singh, Vice Chancellor of Alliance University, to the virtual dais of this historic event. To present the welcome note, let me introduce our Vice Chancellor to all the members in the audience. A leader, visionary, researcher, and an academic, Dr. Anubha Singh has played various roles in her illustrious career of over 3 decades that span across areas of higher education landscape, cross-cultural management, human resource management, and linguistics. Dr. Singh is a talented coalition builder and has to her credit establishment of many international collaborations with renowned universities across Europe, North America, Russia, and Asia. Dr. Singh is recognized as one of the most influential women leaders in education and is also one of the most celebrated women vice chancellors in the country. She has served on numerous international bodies and committees, including the president of Asia Region of International Accreditation Council for British Education USA. Dr. Singh has published extensively and has closely worked with leading Indian and multinational organizations on pertinent issues in business, human resources, linguistics, and technology. She is also the co-author of Management Communication, a case analysis approach with James S. O'Rourke, both. Among the many roles she plays, she is also an art connoisseur, an avid reader, a globetrotter, and a philanthropist. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Niharika. Good evening to all who are joining from India. Good afternoon to people joining from Europe, and hello to everyone else from all other time zones. Honorable Chancellor, members of the board, Pro-Chancellor, faculty and staff members, guests, students, members from media, and Mr. Chetan Bhagat. Today marks yet another day in the history of Alliance University as we begin our journey into a new dimension, the launch of Alliance School of Liberal Arts, a dimension that will bring in knowledge and perspectives together, silence and sounds together, objectivity and subjectivity together, and critical and creative faculties together. We have got the best of minds from the country and abroad in this launch ceremony today, and I welcome you all. I sincerely thank Mr. Chetan Bhagat, who has inspired millions of youth to have with us today. Mr. Bhagat has been a true ambassador of liberal arts, who with education in engineering and management went on to become one of the most successful authors and screenwriters of the modern times in India. As I speak of liberal arts, I do wish to state that it is the only change that can make better of the best. Alliance University has been at the forefront to change that reflects modernity and contemporariness. We have built the best in education, and today we move forward to mark our presence into the space of liberal education. Alliance in its inception years had one vision, a commitment central to educational mission. We started our journey of excellence 25 years ago and have achieved massive success in becoming what we are today. We now are moving ahead to become bigger, bolder, and better, promoting the value of unique educational experience as standard bearers, holding out our promise and the reality of education for education's sake, knowledge for knowledge's sake. I take this moment to express pride in each and every member of Alliance University community who has put in immense effort to make this day to reality. At Alliance School of Liberal Arts, our liberally educated student will be deeply cognizant of the value of intellectual inquiry and will be prepared to formulate original insights and solutions on the basis of critical thinking, intellectual curiosity, and intellectual rigor. whether engaged in questions related to public policy or social justice, ethical reasoning or scientific inquiry, climate change or environmental consciousness, our students will develop the intellectual openness and self-discipline required to examine and judge their own and others' actions and opinions with an understanding, at the same time with an appreciation of the fact that knowledge, values, and beliefs exist in rich ranging from the local to the international. Well, when I talk about India, from the rishis by the banks of the Ganges to the paharis of the Himalayas, from the beaches of Goa to the forts of Rajasthan, from the vibrant people of Kashmir to the colorful population of Kerala, from Bollywood of Mumbai to theaters of Kolkata, from paintings of Madhubani to sculptures of Tanjore, from the riches of Mohenjo-daro to the grandeurs of the settlement of New Delhi, each and every corner of this country is a multitude of dimensions that holds in its true sense the essence of art, history, culture, economics, mathematics, sciences, and celebrations. Genuine intellectual vitality requires that students engage openly and thoughtfully with ideas and perspectives beyond the boundaries of particular cultural or social frameworks. Whether engaged in the study of a foreign language or in a study abroad program, our students will acquire a strong sense of diversity of ideas, vibrancy of experience, and modes of communication with a transdisciplinarity approach. Society needs well and broadly educated citizens. The more liberally educated citizens it has, the stronger it will be as a society. Individuals benefit from being well and broadly educated. The more they are liberally educated, the stronger they'll be in both their personal and their professional lives and as citizens. Society's need for thoughtful leaders have never been greater. But do liberal arts education have any special value in satisfying this need? The answer is a resounding yes. Liberal arts graduates are found to be in the top quadrant for leadership skills. This is from a survey of 15,000 professionals from 300 organizations, 20 industries, and 18 countries. Let me share a few specifics with you. Liberal arts graduates have been and continue to be at the forefront in every field. Educators, scholars, jurists, statesmen, diplomats, politicians, scientists, business executives, artists, musicians, literary writers, journalists, and the list goes on and on. Many have received Nobel, MacArthur, or the so-called Genius Awards, Pulitzer, and other awards recognizing their high achievements. For example, 12 US presidents, or 27%, and 6 US Supreme Court Chief Justices attended liberal arts college. If you look at the data over 10 years, 12 of the 53 Nobel laureates, or 23%, received their undergraduate education in liberal arts. So perhaps paradoxically, it may be business leaders who most persuasively articulate the value of liberal arts education. I'll tell you why I'm saying this. Let me ask you a question. Besides leading incredibly successful global companies, what do all of these leaders have in common? Chad Hurley, founder, CEO, YouTube. Brian Chesky, founder, CEO, Airbnb. Stuart Butterfield, founder, CEO of Flickr and Slack. Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Facebook. Lloyd Blankfein, CEO, Goldman Sachs. Jamie Dimon, CEO, JP Morgan. Evan Spiegel, founder, CEO, Snapchat. Steve Ells, founder, CEO, Chipotle. Starbucks founders Gordon Barker, Jerry Baldwin, Jeff Siegel, they're all products of a liberal arts education, graduating with degrees in literature, philosophy, psychology, history, finance, economics, and so on. Michael Eisner, the former CEO of Disney, did double major in English and theater. Judy McGrath, the former MTV chairwoman and CEO, received again her bachelor's in English. Anne Pillay, the former CEO of Xerox, earned a BA in journalism and English. Interestingly, I don't know if you still remember, a few years ago, Forbes published a cover story about an emerging trend in the tech industry, recruiting liberal arts graduates. The cover page had an interesting illustration, and it said, "New golden ticket, you don't have to code to get rich. How liberal arts grads are conquering Silicon Valley." So the cover star was Slack and Flickr co-founder Stuart Butterfield, who was a philosophy major, and he was dazzling Silicon Valley. Butterfield told George Anders, who was the author of this article, the cover story, that studying philosophy taught him two things. He said, "I learned how to write really clearly. I learned how to follow an argument all the way down, which is invaluable in running meetings. And when I studied the history of science, I learned about the ways that everyone believes something is true until they realize that it wasn't true." Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube today, credits her transition from a liberal arts major to CEO to a few key moments of insight and a whole lot of confidence and hard work, of course. Wojcicki believes that computer science should be a required course in high schools today. Like a foreign language, speaking about literature, she says, if only 14% of the population could read literature, the world would be different. Liberal arts students learn not as a means to achieving an end, but for the love of learning. It is easier to build these abilities by engaging in subjects of your selection than by working around a rigid curriculum. In today's world, the courses one learns in college quickly turn obsolete. Where engineering, sciences, and law graduates fall short, liberal arts seem to have the answers. One of the best examples is from Steve Jobs. He speaks at length on the influence of his calligraphy class, reiterating how liberal arts is part of Apple's DNA. From the corporate world, let me take you back to literature. To quote Sir Andrew Achique from Shakespeare 12th Night, he says, "Oh, had I but followed the arts." In bemoaning the quality of his education, the arts he refers to would not have been the subjects that we would think of today as the arts, but the 7 liberal arts that were mainstay of grammar school education in Shakespeare's time. The 7 liberal arts were divided into the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, which were more about number and content, and the trivium, grammar, dialectic or logic, and rhetoric, which were more about language and ways of doing things. The 3 arts of the trivium would be developed simultaneously, and once mastered, it was expected that a student would have acquired the knowledge, the reasoning skills, and the ability to communicate well that would stand them in good stead and for the further study of the quadrivium. I am pleased to tell you that promoting the value of unique educational experience, Alliance School of Liberal Arts is defined not just for producing liberally educated citizens, but being the best. Retain a curriculum of civic engagement infused into the heart of Alliance School of Liberal Arts, retains the traditional strengths of a liberal education, yet is revamped to address the issues that arise out of the current constraints or deficiencies created by our disciplinary silos by drawing upon the overarching and transdisciplinary curriculum and using concepts from a dozen of disciplines. It is this massive scope of new dimension that Alliance School of Liberal Arts is set to establish. Our journey of the day that we are in to the days to come will redefine how our future generations link every small piece of knowledge to create chunks of information for the coming generations. We are at the core of creating value for every individual who will be part of our journey. Last year, when we set out to redefine our strategic vision to become research-driven and a liberal education-based university, we challenged in our own way of thought and brought in key people to be at the core of redefining this vision. It's important to note that our liberal arts faculty remain committed to the essence of a liberal education, and today are playing a very important role in shaping the future of Alliance University. Each of our steps and every resource that we have today, and I'm sure proudly speaks of the university's vision to build a university that will bring into its fold people from all over the world to engage in intellectually with enriching perspectives. The Alliance School of Liberal Arts in the launch year will lay a very strong foundation to liberal arts education at the university. The school, in its inception year itself, is very proud to have elite core faculty and an exclusive international faculty panel from Oxford, Cambridge, other Ivy League institutions across the globe who would offer courses with a transdisciplinary approach as we grow and build this university brick by brick and thought by thought. I'm sure you would wish us the best and stay joined this evening as we celebrate yet another momentous occasion, yet another milestone in the history of Alliance education, which will be etched as a beautiful memory for all of us in days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I now call upon Dr. Anirudh Sridhar, Associate Dean of Alliance School of Liberal Arts, to take us through liberal education at Alliance. Dr. Anirudh Sridhar received a DPhil from the University of Oxford in the year 2020. His PhD thesis at the University of Oxford received the highest honor points reserved for the thesis in humanities, and it was also recommended for publication with the Oxford University Press. He holds a Master's of Arts from the University of Freiburg, Germany, and a Bachelor of Science from the State University of New York, USA. Dr. Sridhar has taught many interdisciplinary courses at the universities of Freiburg and Oxford, specifically in British and American philosophy and literature. Over to you, Dr. Sridhar.
Thanks, Niharika, for that rather generous introduction. And welcome to all our esteemed guests, particularly Mr. Bhagat. I thought I'll begin with a tiny bit of history, if you'll permit me. I'm going to share my PowerPoint and trust that all of this is visible. So I've tried to subtitle the Alliance School of Liberal Arts as Bridging the Two Cultures. Now, the term two cultures, for those who haven't heard of it, comes from a famous essay by C.P. Snow, suggesting that there's a kind of unbridgeable divide between the sciences and the arts that have become entrenched in the 20th century. Now, if we look back in time to the 15th, 16th century, when modern science as we know it began, we see that such a division really is confected and never actually existed in its actual inception. The overwhelming urge to begin modern science was a reversion to the senses, the idea that somehow just by following our visual, tactile, and auditory and all the other senses, we'll know about the physical world around us better. And by knowing about the world, we'll be able to deal with it in much more efficient and competent ways. So you have it that Francis Bacon, who invented the scientific method, was, of course, a scientist, but also a statesman. You have it that Isaac Newton was a classicist by training, and of course, one of the giants of the history of science. But something happened because of the professionalization of sciences in the last 200 years, which have made it such that the two faculties or the two sides of the coin just don't speak to each other anymore. And this is particularly pernicious and particularly pungently felt in India, where for the past 20, 30 years or so, there has been an overwhelming focus on engineering, mathematics, with a complete sort of a secondary sort of status granted to the arts and philosophy and the humanities. Now, this may have been a part of a sort of economic liberalization that was necessary in order to provide a certain level of material comfort within the country. But on the whole, I would argue that it has led us into a place where we are able to solve problems given to us by sort of forward-thinking and creative people that Dr. Anubha mentioned in her talk, but aren't able ourselves to think of what the solutions and problems might be that need attending. Now, in order to do this, one has, with great haste, to bridge this divide between the two cultures and find a way of giving students the ability to fish rather than granting them the fish in itself. So for that, Alliance has begun School of Liberal Arts. And the way in which Alliance defines liberal arts in itself is that it takes a transdisciplinary outlook to all academic questions. By transdisciplinary, I mean not that it simply teaches students to do mathematics and to learn, and teach them political science, but rather that it says that there are great problems facing us in the 21st century, democracy, climate change, you name it. And in order to solve these overwhelming problems, one needs to approach them from a variety of different ways. So in a way, the liberal arts, although in the traditional sense is knowledge for knowledge's own sake, it is a way to solve problems, because what it does is it allows you to think about reality in a more comprehensive way. And that eventually leads to the best modes of problem solving. So one might even say that it's a way of life. But Aristotle tells us that there are three ways in which to convince people of something. If I tell you that the liberal arts are the way to go in the 21st century, you may not believe me. There are three major ways in which I could try to convince you of this fact. One of them is forensic. I might say that look, I can deduce a few arguments and try and show you that such and such is the case. I could tell you about the future and say that this might have this and that impact in the future. But he says that the most convincing mode of argumentation is in fact demonstration, deixis. So I thought I'll run you through a few slides and try and describe to you what a liberal arts education might look like by asking a very simple question: what is color? So one might say that if an alien were to fly down to Earth, the classical start to any philosophical problem, an alien flies down to Earth, and the alien, of course, has no perception of color, has never seen color, and you want to describe to the alien what color is. What is this phenomenon? What are the ways in which you might go about doing this? The first thing you might do is in line with the general deference that culture pays to science, and say that, look, I mean, color is determined by measurements, that there is something called the visible spectrum, which human beings can perceive, and they are between this many micro centimeters in wavelength, and voila, you've defined the various colors of the spectrum. Now, you might ask yourself, if you tell the alien that the color spectrum is within these sort of minute measurements gotten from an instrument, will the alien actually understand fully the phenomenon of color? And you'll probably answer no. What does it feel like to look at the color red? Is that answered really by saying that it's between these measurements? No, but nonetheless, measurements give us a very important way of thinking and thinking about and communicating and studying the phenomenon of color. Now we might move on and say, look, I mean, let's try and describe a color to the alien. And for this, I've sort of moved away from physics and mathematics to literature. And perhaps we can read a passage of Moby Dick in which the narrator tries and explains why there's a sort of mad chase taken forth by the commander to find this albino whale called Moby Dick, this white whale. So he goes away from the whale at some point in the description and starts talking about the whiteness itself of the whale as something so terrible and terrific that it forces the captain of the ship, Mr. Ahab, to be sort of seduced by this chase. And he says the following: though in many natural objects, whiteness refiningly enhances beauty, as if imparting some special virtue of its own, as in marbles, japonicas, and pearls, and though various nations have in some way recognized a certain royal preeminence in this hue, yet for all these accumulated associations with whatever is sweet and honorable and sublime, there yet lurks an elusive something in the innermost idea of this hue, namely white, which strikes more of panic to the soul than that redness which affrights in blood. Witness the white bear of the poles and the white shark of the tropics. What but their smooth, flaky whiteness makes them the transcendent horrors that they are? Is it that by its indefiniteness, it shadows forth the heartless voids and immensities of the universe, and thus stabs us from behind with the thought of annihilation, when beholding the white depths of the Milky Way? Or is it that as an essence, whiteness is not so much a color as the visible absence of color, and at the same time, the concrete of all colors? Is it for these reasons that there is such a dumb blankness full of meaning in a wide landscape of snows, a colorless all color of atheism from which we shrink? And when we consider that other theory of the natural philosophers, that all earthly hues, even stately or lovely emblazoning, the sweet theory of the natural philosopher, the sweet tinges of sunset skies and woods, yea, and the gilded velvets of butterflies and the butterfly cheeks of young girls, all these are but subtle deceits, not actually inherent in substances, but only laid on from without, so that all deified nature absolutely paints like the harlot whose allurements cover nothing but the charnel house within. And when we proceed further and consider that the mystical cosmetic which produces every one of her hues, the great principle of light, forever remains white or colorless in itself, and if operating without medium upon matter would touch all objects, even tulips and roses, with its own blank tinge. Now, in this evocative prose, we might have gotten a bit further in explaining to the alien what color is by just talking about the absence of color and the kinds of emotions that it strikes, just to think what the lack of color actually feels like. Notice the sort of the germ of the liberal arts approach in the description of the color itself. When Melville takes you through all the different artistic objects that have white, then he goes on to biology, and talks about all the different animals that have white. Then he goes on to geography and talks about the landscapes that have white. And then he goes on to science. The natural philosophers is an old way of talking about scientists. And he says that according to the scientists, there's no such thing as color, right? It's only the light that's the particular forms of light that are actually reflected back. So given all of these different various and profound approaches, one actually gets closer and closer to the notion of color. So let's take another approach. And this is now striking straight at the heart of Aristotle's idea of demonstration. Voila, if you want to know color, behold color. So we look at Turner's paintings. This is the one on your the left of your screen is the Norham Sunrise, Norham Castle at sunrise. It's supposed to be about a castle, and the one on the right is the sinking of the slave ship. So it's important to note why the Turner paintings have been chosen. Turner was the painter who first freed color from form. You might ask in the painting on the left where the castle is, right? That's precisely the point. At sunrise, the experience of actually observing the world will actually give you this little dance of light on a particular animal and something dark and profound in the background, right? So this is in the history of painting the first time perhaps that color has been freed and given free reign over form, shape, and other things like that. So here you have color in a sense in its purest form as it's perceived by human beings. And on the right side, you have color doing more work, right? It's not just telling you what it looks like, but it's giving you a sense of the trauma of the scene. This is the ship in which the slaves are being carried forth to Europe from Africa, and the slaves have been thrown overboard and are sinking. This is a horrendous act of human evil, right? And look at the way in which the background of the sunset and the blood red of the sky evoke all these emotions. So there you have it, right? So a liberal arts education essentially approaches basic questions like what is color, like what is a good society, how do we solve our primary ailments of society. You can scale it up from what is color to the biggest questions that we have, but what it does is it allows you a more profound and comprehensive insight into the nature of things, which then allows you to solve those problems and also to just understand them at a more profound level. So I was going to take you to through another example, but I suppose I'll skip that and just give you a sort of a taste. So here we have Ezra Pound, the great high modernist poet, trying to overcome the notion that when talking about being accurate and being right and being correct, the sciences are the princes, and the arts only talk about vague things like emotion. So basically what Pound is trying to argue here is that in fact, a poem is actually like an equation. It gives you the perfect truth of a particular thing, but in a general sense, in the way in which the Pythagorean theorem tells you that the area of the circle is pi r squared, and you can find out the radius by using the Pythagorean theorem, as you can see on the right side of your screen. He says that his poem, which describes a station in a metro, is the perfect description of what he sees, but in a generalized sense. This is what anybody would see when they walk into a station of a metro, perhaps in the 1920s. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. So notice that the image of petals, right, on a branch, wet black on a branch, suddenly evokes a certain image in your mind, which Pound says is the correct and perfect and idealized image of it. And if you try and change the poem around a little bit, the appearances, the second two lines I just made up myself. The appearance of these faces in the depot, flowers on a damp, dark branch, really the image of a flower on a damp branch doesn't really have a sort of striking sensation the way in which petals on a wet black bough does. So Pound shows you the way in which words are chosen in poems give you a sense of heightened accuracy of the lived world of human beings, in the way in which science gives you accuracy of objects in the purely material world. We can possibly move on from the example. So, I mean, I hope that, this kind of demonstration of how liberal arts tries to answer questions through various different disciplines has been somewhat convincing, at least. So coming back to Alliance University, the university is opening up, a vast swathe of programs. So there'll be an undergraduate section to it. And then there's going to be various majors from maths to political science to psychology to philosophy to sculpture making to logic and statistics even. And there is a way in which the undergraduate program is complemented by the postgraduate fellowship, which aims to it's a one-year fellowship program which aims to train students to be leaders in whatever field to which they aspire, things like government and citizenship, economics, environment and climate change, and logic and art, and any sort of thing in which they aspire to excel. We have a program that's dedicated to creating leaders in that field. So a little bit about how these programs will work. So there's going to be a foundation year in which, in the spirit of freedom, freedom of inquiry, in which the liberal arts is pitched, there will be, the students will have the right to choose their own courses, and they will have to do some essential research courses in the first year itself. But apart from training them to pursue these questions, there's a lot of freedom for students to curate the way in which they will be exposed to these various different ideas. And from that, the students will be then able to choose the major in which they want to focus. And then there's also a minor to complement it. And we obviously encourage students to go wild with the combinations. You can do, for example, literature and mathematics, which was the topic of my own PhD dissertation. The way in which the undergraduate courses work is that after 3 years of undergraduate study, the select students will have a pathway into the Global Leaders Alliance program, which is the fellowship about which I just mentioned. And there they will be, as Dr. Anubha said, exposed to the best Ivy League faculty around the world, and they'll have the opportunity to sort of enjoy all these features. These features, of course, are not just for the fellowship, but also include features that undergraduates will be able to enjoy as well. Of course, undergraduates will get to take classes in their first, second, and third years as well with the international faculty. For the GLA students, there's a cultural heritage tour. Given that Alliance is the first university that's really giving a fully funded fellowship program in the south of India, we want to sort of try and expose students to all the sort of great architectural and cultural marvels that this part of India has to offer. And then, of course, the fellowship program is fully funded. So students across undergraduate and postgraduate study will have the opportunity to do internships and have straight job pathways into things like think tanks, NGOs, government, and higher education, and you name it. So there's the opportunity to do international study exchange with various partners that Alliance University has around the world, in Europe, in Asia, in North America. There's also a dedicated program in the university that helps students apply for higher studies abroad, whether it be from an undergraduate level to a master's or from the Global Leaders Alliance fellowship to a PhD. The students will get to learn modern and ancient languages. So European languages, French, Spanish, German, and then ancient languages, Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin. The students will be encouraged to participate in a holistic, immersive, campus-based learning experience where they become leaders in all the different cultural activities around campus. They will start podcasts, they will host conferences, and they will helm the editing of magazines. And there's also a huge international literary and film festival that's planned where annually Alliance will host the best thinkers, academics, writers, filmmakers around the world in a great sort of coming together of an exchange of ideas. So this is the sort of the whole holistic experience of education that Alliance has planned, and we welcome your applications and look forward to seeing you here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Your explanation of liberal education in Alliance, it's actually given us an understanding of what goes into making education liberal. And I'm sure that the students are really happy to make their own informed choice. And now we've come to the main part of the event, the launch of the Alliance School of Liberal Arts. I call upon our Pro-Chancellor, Mr. Abhay G. Chebbi, to do the honors. Technophile and an astute entrepreneur is the other words that best describe Mr. Abhay Chebbi, our Pro-Chancellor. Progressive use of emerging technologies to enhance scalability, aiding in enhanced effectiveness, has directed the university in becoming a pioneer in academic digitization. Under his able guidance, the university transformed the teaching-learning process during the pandemic to a hybrid model, displaying readiness to embrace change. Mr. Abhay has held several key positions before assuming his leadership role at the university. And under his leadership, the university witnessed a steady increase of student intake, both in quality and diversity. He also built strong international linkages with prominent global universities in Germany, with an MBA from the University of Michigan.
May I?
Over to you, Mr. Abhay.
Thank you, Niharika. A warm good evening to all of you. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of members of the university, students, alumni, partners, and everyone who's joined us online, especially Mr. Chetan Bhagat, our esteemed guest. I'd like to congratulate him for inspiring young Indians with his literary contributions. In his own way, Chetan has paved way for individuals to follow their passion and dream of an alternate career choice. This by itself is an achievement, and he's been a stellar example for this. So I welcome you, Mr. Bhagat. I'd like to thank all of you for being a part of this momentous event once again. From being one of the pioneers of quality management education 25 years ago, to being the first private university in South India, to now launching the Alliance School of Liberal Arts, the much relevant education that is required for the 21st century, this journey of Alliance education is owed to the founder and his liberal thinking, or may I say, freedom to think differently. Alliance School of Liberal Arts that is being launched today has gone through a year-long process of dreaming, working tirelessly towards it with passion. On this occasion, I would like to congratulate and thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, the Associate Dean for the school, Senior Director, and the entire team of teaching and non-teaching members for making this a reality. I take pride in stating that the corridors of learning at Alliance is now open to welcome young intellectuals from diverse backgrounds who are willing to be transformed through the transdisciplinary education system. Well, many have spoken about the relevance and irrelevance of liberal education. I want to share with all of you my story. This is a true story. While I was pursuing, and the story might have relevance to the liberal education in the larger scheme of things. While I was pursuing my BTech from a very popular, recognized tech school in India, I came from a tier 2 town who got into this not knowing languages, not knowing how to express, lacking several abilities, but not knowing that of what I don't know, that I need to know. I quickly started my internship, and that's where the story gets interesting. I started my internship at a company called Nortel Networks. It doesn't exist anymore. It has been bought over. During that time, I had a simple task of laying copper and fiber cables at a client's business. During the day, I spent my days working very hard, enjoying my work, deploying best of the IT infrastructure. Well, there was a hassle and always a constant struggle in meeting the deadlines, but I was doing my best along with other folks. And during the night, for a chance, I thought, I took to reading. I read a novel, which was a science fiction novel that spoke a lot about futuristic nonsense and spoke about how everything is going to be wireless in the future. I secretly one day, during a meeting where discussions of how the project is not going to be completed was spoken about, I secretly wished that I could make myself speak of a Wi-Fi future, and let's not break our heads in laying all these cables to meet the final connectivity, the last mile as they called it. Sadly, I couldn't find the words nor the conviction to do so. Clearly, the project was half-baked. I went on with my semesters. I completed my BTech and I moved on. But much later, I realized that the client had deployed the best of the virtual private network and how happy they were on not having all those cables up until the end device. This is a very, very simple story. This was an aha moment for me. A very simple story, yet a profound one, where had I got the voice to express myself clearly, had I got the open mind to talk about it and be articulate, things would have been different. Well, I'm talking about certain skills that liberal education will impart, such as reading, reflective writing, having an open mind, and expressing oneself articulately. All of these are tenets to making a student in liberal education successful. By this, I mean an education that empowers students, empowers them to confront contradictions, it empowers them to argue and urge them to analyze theories in depth, to distill data, to deliver relevance, to have scholastic debates, and much more. Let me tell you, the word liberal in liberal arts education, as often famously said, is not the opposite of conservative. It means free men, from Latin, to have free thinking. Liberal arts education goes beyond arts and humanities. It includes math, political science, economics, social and physical sciences, and much more. Well, I chanced upon this very beautiful quote from Leonardo da Vinci, which read, "All our knowledge has its origins in our perceptions." All our knowledge has its origins in our perceptions. Now, being an educator, it is my responsibility as much as everyone else's in this field to think differently. In short, be liberal and allow creativity to merge with practicality, theories and concepts with experiences, emotions with thoughts, and life with people. At the heart of it all lies our ability as humans to deal with our complexities and celebrate life, leaving imprints of our knowledge, experiences, and connections for future generations to count on. Talking a little bit about the liberal education context in India, the higher education landscape in India itself is evolving and emerging as one of the go-to destinations for quality education. The new Education Policy 2020, envisaging academic disciplines beyond the professional versus the liberal education binary, the Indian higher education system seems to be ready. It's ready for a decompartmentalization. The biggest merit, I would say, in liberal education, according to me, is its innate ability to help an individual develop both creative and analytical aspect, of course, leading to a holistic transformation. Well, I am sure that the liberal arts education at Alliance University will have this one singular philosophy. That is, students will be taught how to think and not what to think. Students will be taught how to think and not what to think. This philosophy will enable young learners to develop skills such as creative entrepreneurship, tolerance to ambiguity that we see around, and skills that transcend boundaries of their own industries by connecting the dots between creativity, theoretical frameworks, application, and life lessons. It will also help students to look at the 21st century problems such as climate change, increased polarization with a different lens, so that they could deconstruct ideas and make effective decisions applicable to handle problems ranging from social injustice to, say, creative advertising. Well, friends, while the future of liberal education in India is very bright, it is for institutions such as ours to shape liberal education in Indian culture, with Indian culture and ethos at the very center. Our philosophies, ideologies, and multidimensional capabilities should be translated into well-defined learning outcomes. And this will truly be a game changer in the liberal arts education space in India. As an individual who is very closely observing the development of liberal arts education landscape in India, in my opinion, three key elements define excellence in the Indian context, and those being student diversity, second one being the Indian heritage and ethos as a strong foundation, and the third is the transdisciplinary learning approach that our Vice Chancellor and Associate Dean spoke about. Be it our undergraduate courses or even the Global Leader Alliance Fellowship, we at Alliance aim to give the society leaders for tomorrow who are intellectually sound, ethically right, and creatively unique. They will be able to tackle issues effectively and arrive at a plausible solution that will uplift the society and nation at large, making Alliance University a preferred destination for all stakeholders. I'd like to end this talk with a recent quote that I came upon. This is from the Upanishads, and I'm translating for all our benefit. I'm reading this out because I feel this is so fit in the context of liberal education. And here it goes. Our senses are turned outwards. Man, therefore, almost looks outwards and not onto himself. But occasionally, there are the ones who dare. They desire to know the truth. Those are the ones who look within to find their real selves. May liberal education in all earnest create seekers who go beyond the realm of conventions to embark on lives of discoveries. that turn onto their most enduring voyage to explore themselves beyond their own perceptions and limitations. Finally, I'd like to end this talk by extending my many congratulations to the entire Alliance family on embarking on this bold and exciting journey. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And well, in fact, I would like to take this opportunity to officially launch the Alliance School of Liberal Arts with all your blessings and best wishes. Thank you so much. Over to you, Niharika.
Thank you, sir. It's overwhelming to see the growth trajectory of Alliance University and, of course, to be a part of it. We are now ready to soar to new heights with this new academic unit. That's the Alliance School of Liberal Arts.
Thank you.
I now call upon Professor Ravi Chakraborty to introduce Mr. Chetan Bhagat. Professor Ravi Chakraborty is teaching at the Department of Language and Literature at Alliance. He is finishing his doctoral thesis at the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. Working at the intersection of philosophy of literature and philosophy of mathematics, Professor Ravi seeks to develop a transdisciplinary conversation between the two cultures of literature and mathematics. He has arrived at such a convergence through a journey marked by a bachelor's in mechanical engineering at IIT Kanpur and a master's in literature from the University of Delhi. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Neharika. Our guest today, Mr. Chetan Bhagat, is quite simply India's best-selling author. But he cannot be summed up as simply, for he is also a widely read columnist, a motivational speaker, a scriptwriter, and in his latest avatar, an increasingly viral YouTuber. So if that was not enough, he maintains an active Twitter profile with millions of followers and finds himself unwittingly embroiled in all kinds of fests, out of which he repeatedly extricates himself in pleasantly hilarious antics. All in all, he has now established himself as a pioneer of the elusive craft of capturing popular imagination in a diverse range of mediums. But this is still not enough. Quite apart from his background in engineering and management, as a columnist, Chetan exhibits a natural flair for teasing out arguments about policy, politics, and economics into extremely digestible nuggets of opinion. As a motivational speaker, he has spanned out across India's small towns and struck a chord with India's vast army of youth awaiting salvation in a better future. It is this experience of contrasting cultures of knowledge and action that makes Chetan somewhat oddly and unexpectedly ideal for the launch of a liberal arts event. For the liberal arts ultimately aims to nurture this flexibility and nimbleness to flit between disciplines in the pursuit of new questions and answers. So Chetan, I welcome you to join us and enlighten us with your opening thoughts on this occasion. After that, we will engage in a conversation meant to slyly direct Chetan to expound upon the most thought-provoking concerns regarding liberal arts in India. Over to you, Chetan.
Hi guys, can you see me, hear me? I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Wow, such a nice topic. Thank you, Alliance, for having me. And such a important and nice topic for me today. Firstly, I'll just say hi. Thanks for the nice introduction. Thank you for joining, guys, or those who came to this webinar. It's very nice of you. And जो आज का topic है, like the discussion topic, it is basically is liberal arts, what can we do with liberal arts? Is it important? And I'm going to be very honest about it. I'm going to be very, very personal about it because I do think it's a very important thing. We have neglected, to be very frank, as a country, as a culture, maybe as a people, we have neglected or not understood how liberal education is so important in the country. And I think Alliance School of Liberal Arts is not only teaching these things, but also discussing these, having these conversations. And that I think is really, really important. Why I say that? I am the living example, guys. I'm the living example. If I won't, then who will? Because what have I studied? I have studied engineering. I have studied an MBA. And what am I known for? Why have you invited me today? Because I'm a writer. What has made me famous is my books, my stories, maybe the movies or whatever, YouTube, all these things. And all that is due to my writing. And if that was not there, I would probably be working in some bank, maybe meet you someday as part of a deal or something, but not like as popular as I am. So for me, everything that has happened, like the truly amazing things that have happened in my life, I owe a lot to fields other than science and engineering and physics and chemistry and maths. And that's something I have to accept, really. And I like a lot of people in India, I became an engineer because everybody said engineer ban jao, because engineer bano ya doctor bano, choose. That's the choices. And I said, okay, engineer might get good marks in maths, I'll do engineering. But now that I look back, I don't think I am that person. I mean, I like science. I like all knowledge. If you look at a very broad um, definition of liberal arts, I guess it is that it's every field. But I mean, I guess I do like science, but at the same time, I have a lot of interest in certain aspects, which is basically writing, of course. Psychology is something that interests me a lot. Sociology interests me a lot, and I use it. I mean, psychology I use to build characters, to understand stories, to understand motivations of all the people I'm putting in my book or movie or script or whatever. I use sociology in my columns when I write about how India thinks and how India is doing. All that has to do with sociology, and I think, to put it very honestly, it has not been given the importance that it has, and I think it's mainly because of like 2-3 things. First is, of course, this whole thing of employability. India is a country where people really feel like, okay, you must get a secure job, you must get married, you must get settled in life, you must get stable. And uske liye, if you do engineering or something, it's the way to go. Then because of that, in school only, they say, are you science student, are you commerce student, and are you arts student? And then it has its own kind of hierarchy there. It's not like there are 3 different flavors of ice cream. No, it's clear, ye science student hai, acha, or ye art student hai. So ek judgment aa jati hai. People really start thinking of that as something, oh, ye to art student hai. And I can tell you one thing, guys, that is extremely wrong. It is extremely wrong, not just because at a moral level, it's because for human progress, you need science, but you also need liberal arts. You need to know what society is all about, what people are all about, how it all works out, frameworks which are not explainable by science. Some of the things science can tell you. Science can tell you how to make a corona vaccine, which is amazing. So nobody's going to discount science. But what do Indians want? For example, if you have to answer this question, what do Indians really want? How do they vote? What do they vote? What are the choices? Why do they vote a certain way? Why do they vote for a certain way? For example, this is just one thread. Isn't it important to know? And if that's important to know what Indians want, how Indians think, how have they changed in the last, like in 2022, how they think, how did they think in 2002, in 1982? Isn't that important? And I think that is something that needs to be taken a lot more seriously, and we haven't. So that was the one reason, that hierarchy of students. I think the second thing is, we feel that liberal arts is not scientific, which, like I said, is not true at all. Liberal arts is also scientific. All knowledge is scientific, right? All knowledge is based on rational thinking, logic, things like that. So it's something that needs to come into, that needs to be done, brought into subjects where you don't normally associate science with. For example, in psychology, if you ask anybody in psychology these days, all experiments are done to very high scientific standard. The same way as they test a new medicine, which is like a pharma science, they now also do psychological experiments, doing the same number of subjects, double blind, this, that, everything, they do it. So whether you do a survey or everything, they do it like that. So that is something which I think sometimes is missing in India. And I think attempts at places like Alliance University and all, the attempt is to understand that even in liberal arts, it's not just studying classics, it's not just studying old Greek literature and things like that. It is also it's also cutting edge. I mean, there's a cutting edge liberal arts. There is a up-to-date liberal arts is the newest developments in liberal arts. Like I said, liberal arts, I mean, in the US, liberal arts means everything. I mean, it's like life sciences, physical sciences, logic, mathematics, everything, philosophy, history, social sciences, creative arts, fine arts, music, performing arts, all this is part of liberal science. And what I'm trying to tell you is everything, all of these things are connected to each other, of course. You need mathematics in biology too. You need it in science and neuroscience too. Geography needs a lot of scientific things. So that is something I feel is often not understood, mainly because of our culture, mainly because of the way sometimes Indians think. And I think that needs to be changed about. The other thing that happens with liberal arts is a lot of this intellectual class forms, which I have experienced. Honestly, I have experienced in my field because I'm a writer and I'm working in the publishing kind of industry, you can say. And a lot of people in the publishing industry are they sometimes are not able to relate to the people, or they have become too intellectual, and they're not. So I think liberal arts education should not only be there, but it should also be there for the people. It should be there for the common person to understand, to benefit. When you're looking at liberal arts, look at it from a point of view of look at it from a point of view of how will it benefit the average Indian. How is it, how can we, if something is complicated, like some concept is complicated, how can we simplify it? How can we yeah, make it more approachable? How can we not make it like an intellectual kind of thing? So those are some of the things to consider. I also want to tell you one thing. When I was in IIT, we were in IIT, many people don't know this. It is that we have to do 4 humanities courses as part of engineering. So I did mechanical engineering, and there were like maybe lots of courses there, 40-50 courses I've done to finish my engineering. 4 courses had to be on something related to liberal arts, humanities, things like that. I remember doing a course in linguistics. I remember doing a course in economics was part of it. I think I think even psychology, things like that. And I remember that they were just courses. I mean, they were not like really directly connected to my engineering, but I loved doing them. I absolutely loved it. And I think even though I'd not become a writer then, and I was not even thinking I'll become a writer one day at that time, I remember thinking that, wow, I would have loved to study more of this. So I think a more emphasis on liberal arts is important. People who are studying it should realize that humanity cannot function with just 2 subjects. Like, we can't have a world where everybody's an accountant or engineer. That'll be a very strange kind of world. We can't progress as a race unless we explore ourselves in every aspect. How does the mother and child bond form? I mean, not everything is going to be explained by engineering, right? So that is something we have to realize. People who are studying liberal arts should realize that they are doing something very good and very helpful to society. And it's not like one is beneath and one is above. They should neither feel inferior, that engineering is somehow superior, but they should also not feel superior. They should not become like intellectual about it. Understand, be curious. In general, I say in life, be curious. So whatever you're studying, be curious. And hopefully this liberal arts education teaches you to be curious. I'm a very curious person. A lot of times people ask me why I've been able to do what I do. How do I have the energy to do what I do? I became a YouTuber last year. At age 47, I became a YouTuber. And it's doing fine. And I had to learn. I had to learn how to, do the whole thumbnails and mics and audio and everything, because I'm a curious person. I was like, dekhe to sahi, ye chalta kaise hai? So always have that approach in life. Always see everything as knowledge. Always see everything as a chance to learn. These subjects have been created to make it easy to teach, right? You can make a book about all those topics and you can compile them and you can hire a teacher who teaches them. But it doesn't mean that they are very different things. Everything is same, whether it's a psychology or economics or English or maths, everything is knowledge that human beings have accumulated over centuries. And now it's passed on to the new generation so that they can learn that knowledge and make something out of their life, do something for society and things like that. So have that understanding. I think it's really great that liberal arts universities are being created. They are so passionate about the liberal arts. They will do sessions on liberal arts and they are inviting me, because trust me guys, it's the engineering colleges who keep inviting me. And I'm like, well, that's very nice and very sweet. But it's today, if you just think about it, it's not my engineering because of which people know me. It's because I felt there is more to the world beyond engineering. I felt there's more to life, and it could be things like writing, it could be things like marketing, could be things like even art. I'm not an artist, but I had to, like, for example, whenever my covers are designed for my books, some artist does it, some designer does it, and I work very closely with them. I learn with them. I because it's nice. I love it because I just want, I respect all forms of learning, all subjects. And so I congrats again to Alliance for doing this. And thank you again for honoring me to come and speak to you guys. And I'm very proud today that I'm also eligible to come in a liberal arts university, because like I said, like I'm known for whatever I've done due to my liberal arts work, even if I've not had a liberal arts education, although I did do 4 courses at IIT. And of course, RMB also had a few courses which are, you can say, are liberal arts in a way. So thank you so much. I think there's a moderated session next. So I'm still here, but thank you guys for having me again. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
So, thanks, Chetan, for this insightful beginning. First of all, I think to continue on what you said about you being invited to a liberal arts college for the first time, I think one of the reasons that I personally can't help noticing is that although you do have an ongoing tiff with what you call the intellectuals, but you have also been known to reflect on popular culture itself. For example, one of your most interesting reflections where you talked about how the rise of the mobile phone led to a kind of a special kind of literacy which made your books popular. So in some sense you have always been reflecting on what makes you popular, and that critical perspective is something also that you are known for, and that is something that we would like to do in the liberal arts. So it's not as if we don't at least believe in these facile divides between popular culture and high culture. So is there something more you can talk about what made you so popular, like all the context, the social and technological context that made you popular? So that's the kind of thing we study, right?
Yeah, I think, all of us attending to this, most of them are Indians, I can imagine. And we are really blessed that we are in a country which has 1.4 billion people. We have so many people. So whatever you choose to do in life, you actually will not have a shortage of people. If you like if you have your own business, or you want to do something to reach people, politics, entertainer, I don't know, business, like I said, it's always going to be like there's a lot of people. But for that to have access to those people, you must know India. And for me, when I wanted to become a writer and people said he's an Indian writer, I wanted to be an Indian writer. What does an Indian writer mean? Who is read all over India. Now, I cannot say that I want to be a writer Indian writer is not somebody who's praised in London. An Indian writer is not someone who is read only in South Bombay or Bandra or South Delhi. Just as they have this, I know sometimes they have these fashion weeks and they call it India Fashion Week. But it's only like some 5-star hotel in South Bombay that people have come to that. People in Indore and people in Bhubaneswar and people in Guwahati and people in Ernakulam, they are not aware of it and they don't even wear that. And that's how is that India Fashion Week? But they call it that. So we are very easily, we borrow the name India. But I felt if I want to be called an Indian writer, I must be somebody who is read everywhere, if possible. And so therefore I've chosen to write stories that are interesting and fun. Of course, they have to be good because people are not going to just read it like that, but they're also simply written. Because it is my job to do the thinking. It is my job to do the heavy thinking. But when I express it in words, it has to be as simple as possible, even if I'm discussing complex things. Like today, actually, it's a pretty complex topic, liberal arts education. I mean, it sounds like a scary topic, like some professor is going to come and talk. But I thought about it, how can I make it interesting? How can I make it simple? Same thing I've done with my writing. And I think when I started writing, like I said, one of the three problems, one is this art student, science student thing. The other is this intellectual, thing that goes on. And of course, we are not cutting it sometimes and we don't see it as scientific. But that intellectual thing started happening to me. Like people started saying, oh, he's not even really a writer because he's so simple. And I was like, when जब कोई writer बनता है तो क्या चाहते हो वो पहुंचे लोगों तक या ना पहुंचे? You want me to write in a way that I don't reach people? That doesn't make sense. That's not in history. Big writers have always reached people. What are you talking about? So I personally believe that what is the point of this liberal arts education if it doesn't help humanity? What is the point? That some people who understand liberal arts will only sit with the liberal art intellectuals and they will all tell each other how smart they are. What is the use of that? You can do it. I'm not judging you, but I feel I have one life and we should use it to do more. So I think every Alliance student should have that thing. I'm learning this. Others are not getting a chance to learn this. But I'm going to use it in a way that an average person can also benefit. Whatever it may come to something, it come to your job or business or, whatever you choose to become. So I think that is a better attitude and you reach further in life. You reach further. I mean, I've been able to reach people. Once you reach people in India, I've been able to do so many different things because of that. I've been given TV shows and I've been given, so many opportunities because I'm known. So I'm really blessed. And I think it's to do with the fact that I believe that we must all reach Indians and benefit them. Otherwise, what's the point? So, yeah. And I'm really happy that you said that we don't believe in that. Alliance is a university for everyone. It's not like,
So we have had a few people just very happy, just sort of really elated at your presence. So some students have been sending us messages. So we haven't gotten questions as of yet. But just continuing on that note, one of the things that you've been speaking about making liberal arts more inclusive, and I know that you often talk about how when you go for motivational talks, you especially focus on the small towns, which are usually not in the radar of the national media or something like that. So however, you specifically concentrate on the idea that English language, could be one of the tools for upward mobility for this large crowd that we see. But, if you could just push that further and say that encourage these people to also, indulge in liberal arts, to also see that, language is not just, as you say, for, everyday communication, but also entering the world of ideas and knowledge which could be relevant eventually. So how would we have that communication with people in small towns, with people who are not in these vibrant metropolis like Bangalore? So how can we?
Everybody wants to rise in life. It's a myth that only in metros or only in people want to learn certain things, and in other places they are not interested. You go to India, you go to rural India also, you go to farmers, their children, they want to, learn things, they want to get educated, they want to get certain kind of job. They want that, you have to appeal to people's self-interest. You have to give people what they want. Now you can give them, of course, you can give them potato chips and Coke, and they want that also. But that's not the business we are in, and thankfully so. So we are in the business of knowledge, education, ideas, and I think if something can give people a better life and it appeals to their aspirational self, they will listen. But at the same time, you can always adjust. For example, Hindi. For example, I personally, when I started YouTube, I started making videos in English, or say 80% was English. Then I started making them in Hindi, and they started getting very good response. And I was like, okay, I may be an English language writer, लेकिन मैं अगर हिंदी में बनाऊं तो क्या दिक्कत है? मोटिवेशनल के वीडियोस हैं तो हिंदी में भी बना सकते हैं. So that changes the way people look at me, and that gives me a different access. So whatever is needed, see, it's first how to say it's the intention. And I think if you have the intention that, listen, I want to reach these people, I will one day be there, yeah, then you tune yourself to them, and you don't judge them, and you don't want to be in your, neither do you judge them, and nor do you want to be in your comfort zone. A lot of people want to be in their comfort zone कि मुझे वो बैंगलोर ही पसंद है, मुझे वो अपना उसी मेरे टाइप का क्राउड है, मेरे को उसी से बात करनी है. ऐसा क्यों है? ऐसा नहीं करने की जरूरत ना. Like, you have to expand. So I live in a very different kind of house now. I live in a very different life. My lifestyle is very different. But when I'm making a video on YouTube and I'm seeing, okay, it's a 22-year-old boy who's looking for a job. He can't get a job. He is not very confident about his English or whatever. Uske liye main video bana raha hu. So, that you have to be willing to come down to that level. And I think then it will happen, and it shows. And you have to decide, are we going to be somebody who's exclusive, kabhi exclusive? Or are we going to be somebody who's inclusive and inclusive? The only thing you should all chase is excellence. Don't change elitism. Don't chase elitism. Don't chase that I want to be elite. Be excellent at what you do, and then success will follow. Everything follows in life from that, actually.
So just continuing on that, Chetan, because the point that you made, I just want to let you know that one of the things that we want to really focus on is how, as you rightly said, instead of chasing elitism, and how many elite universities become these isolated campuses. One of the things about the liberal arts program is that it wants to connect the local community. And we, as you talked about the importance of Hindi and the vernacular languages and communication, we actually want to make that as part of our curriculum. Like, that's, as part of the curriculum, we have to learn Kannada, foreign languages, local languages,
Wow.
So that's been compulsory, mandated as a part of the curriculum. But one thing which you mentioned, which I really I noted that down. You talked about how you were on YouTube and you adapted yourself and you sort of reinvented yourself. This is one thing that I must tell you that, for all if there have been any so-called intellectual writers which you speak about who have been staring at you, this is something that some of the greatest writers have done, like people like Charles Dickens and many writers used to publish in magazines. Their novels used to be serialized. So this whole idea that, writers adapting themselves to different mediums is actually a very, it's actually not a mark of, it's actually a mark of your creativity, so to speak. So if you could tell us how that has happened, because you have been in the most diverse mediums. I think you've been on a dance show, you have done YouTube shows. So how do you change and sort of adapt yourself to that new thing? So that's something that you'd all learn from. So
Firstly, you have to realize that you are always a learner throughout life. You will never arrive just because you've done an education, just because you've done PhD. Even if you've done, forget bachelor's, master's, that doesn't mean you know everything, and just because I am successful as a writer doesn't mean I know everything. I don't know everything, and thank God for that, because there is so much to learn. And I think so that student mindset should never go away from your life, firstly. Secondly, always try to understand and predict the trends. I'll be very honest. One of the publishers recently is closing down in India, Westland, and they have also published some of my books. Like, in fact, my last few books they have, and it's really a devastating blow for many writers because they are, just maybe their books were about to be published or they were doing that, and that was their main job. I kind of knew that books by itself, the physical books, is no longer going to be. I mean, they will be there. It's not like they're not going to be there, but it's really like going to not be how it used to be. But new things will come. New ways of transmitting messages, ideas will come. And I've been working on it for many years. That's why I have YouTube. That's why my Instagram. That's why my Twitter. That's why my columns. That's why my TV shows. And these kind of webinars, and even like the pre-corona, now it's kind of coming back. Even the live shows in places. So for me, it did not affect me. The closure of Westland. In fact, I'm fine. It doesn't affect me because I've already been anticipating this. Because, guys, whatever you're studying, you have to realize the world will keep on changing. The world will keep on changing. Like today, we are doing this webinar. It was unthinkable 3-4 years back also that I would be like here in a big function, and it is all happening online, and people are watching it on their phones, laptops, whatever. So I always feel that people who adapt. In fact, this is Charles Darwin who said this. So the biological evolution, nature does not reward the most intelligent or strongest. Most intelligent creatures don't survive. Most strongest creatures don't survive in nature. The most adaptive creatures survive. And that's really important. In fact, I give the example of a creature that nobody respects, which is a cockroach. And that I am inspired by cockroach because cockroach is one of the most adaptive creatures on earth. They were there millions of years ago. They were there when dinosaurs were there. But dinosaurs were big and strong, but they died because they couldn't adapt as the earth was. But cockroaches adapt. They can live in the jungle. They can live in the kitchen. They can live in the car. You can try to kill them. They don't die. Right? I mean, there is an industry like Baygon, Hit, all these, like, we've killed all the tigers, even though there are protections in place for them. Almost we've killed all the tigers because for whatever reason. Cockroaches, there is a mandate to kill them. Like the whole of humanity is like, let's kill cockroaches, right? Nobody likes them. Nobody has said, oh, so cute, I want to, don't kill cockroaches. Everybody wants to kill them. But have we been able to? Human beings are so smart. Have we been able to eliminate cockroaches? We can't. Why? Because cockroaches keep adapting. In cold weather, they will just keep like surviving, and that's what happens. So you want to be somebody in life who will keep changing. It's okay. When Corona happened, it was like everything gone. Like books were gone, films were gone, talks were gone, and then the process is I sat and felt sorry for myself for 1 month, 2 months, and then I'd have a small team of 2, and I said, what? Let's not do this. Let's adapt. I keep talking about adapting. I keep giving cockroach example. Let's do it. So we did it. So we started YouTube. We started webinars. We did the whole turnaround, and so it's been okay. I mean, we are still getting there, but we have actually done better things now. Some of the things we are doing better than even. So that is the attitude. And look, guys, that has got nothing to do with writing. Right? What I've just told you is an attitude, it's a mindset, and that's got nothing to do with your writing talent. Whichever field you're in, whatever your job you're in, remember that the world will keep changing and you must keep adapting. If you don't adapt, if you say, "Ab mujhe sab aata hai, I know everything," hame pata hai. Even if Alliance University says, what, we've been there for 25 years, abhi aage hame sab aata hai, hame mat samjhao. It's not going to lead to growth. But if you say, what, what is Alliance going to look like at 35 years? How are we different? What is the next 10 years? Hum alag kaise hone wale? At 50, kya alag hoga? And if you say, no, we are going to be the same, hame sab aata hai. No, that's not going to work. You have to keep on investing in the future. You have to anticipate the future, and you have to keep adapting to it.
Let me have a look at your So, we haven't received any significant questions yet. I just one thing that stuck on my mind when you said initially, the whole idea of being simple, the tendency that intellectuals have of, or the so-called intellectuals have of of making things too complex. But you will also agree that, and you yourself mentioned this in the beginning, when you were speaking about liberal arts in the very beginning, that how things can be complex too, right? There is an essential complexity to things. So especially I'm thinking about the kind of interventions you make in your columns, when you talk about economics and policy issues. Would you agree that sometimes it is actually an occasion for us to learn more about the complexity of those issues? While of course your columns can be very good way of entering a debate, but maybe the problem at hand is probably more complex than a debate. So how would you? So maybe what would you respond to that? Like, how do we have this retain this desire to learn complex things and yet deliver things in a simple way? So that's something that if you could talk.
Yeah, there is this saying, it's not that simple to be simple. It's not that simple to be simple. Yeah, it's true. To be simple, you must really, really understand something. Only then you can simplify something. And if it's very easy in liberal arts, especially I've seen, to become very dense and complex and like writing these paragraphs and like thinking that you're doing something very intellectual, but you're not. If you can't explain it in a simple way, if you are not able to do it, that means there's somewhere a lack of understanding. And I think you have to first really understand something well. Like if I have to tell a story in a simple way, I have to know the story inside out. I should have seen it from this person's point of view, that person's point of view, that person's point of view, everybody, so that I know that I live in that world. So now I think, okay, what is the simplest way for me to tell this story without all the complications? And then I streamline it and I make an output, which is the output is simple, but the input and the processing may be complex, and it will be. Some things are not like, but the presentation must be simple, because that's when you'll reach people. That is when you will have the maximum success, honestly. Even as a liberal arts person, you want to, like, let's say you do a paper, in academic papers, whether you're working in a company, you're writing an email, you're making a proposal, you're making a pitch, whatever, we will all be writing. Whether you're not, you're not writing books and all, we will all be writing. And if you are not able to express yourself in a simple manner, it's going to hurt you. And so you have to tell yourself, I'm not going to make it complicated. Write to express, not to impress.
Yeah, we have a few interesting questions, which, it would be unfair to this young crowd. So we have so let me, there's this person who said that I actually want to be a writer. I have written stories online and got good response too, but my parents want me to take science major and I don't think that that's what I want. What should I do? Follow my heart or brain? So over to you, Chetan.
Follow my heart or brain. Listen, guys, you it's your life. It's not your parents' life. You must do, but you must follow your heart and brain. I think the question about heart and parents is not fair to them. That's their preference, but it's your life. But make sure that when you're doing writing, how are you going to pay the bills? You need a job. How are you going to pay the bills? So, of course, like I said, you write in various forms today. It's not just books. In fact, I would recommend not to do books. Even though I'm coming from the heritage, but there are other places to write. I would rather do those. But yeah, follow your heart and your brain, and it's your life, man.
Thanks, Chetan. So one thing which I was seeing an interview of yours before this, and I noticed this is a spoof interview of yours where you talk about your influences on your writing, and that was would be very interesting because you talk about simple stories, and the book you mentioned is George Orwell's Animal Farm, right? And it so happens that people in that audience had not read it, but having read it was more curious to know if you could tell us that, what books you read, that were formative influences in you, like they could be popular, literary or otherwise.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I mean, George Orwell was a very big influence because he's written very simple. Like if you read the book, it's very simple. It is no complicated words, there's nothing, but the concept and the ideas are like so complex and so deep that they are applicable today. Animal Farm is quoted even today. 1984 is quoted so many times to describe the politics in a country or in a world sometimes. So it is just really a extraordinary piece of literature. Even like Charles Dickens was a big one, like you said. He used to serialize. He used to stand. He used to like sit outside the port and actually read out his stories. He used to read out his stories. So that I wanted to learn from. Ayn Rand was a big influence. I just wanted R.K. Narayan. I used to read a lot of books, and I always found myself drawn to simpler books. That's the truth, So that really helped. So I think that's what I believe writers who are simple but have had a big impact on the world through their writing. Those are the ones I really like.
So we have a nice question. What are from Miss Arati? She says, Chetan Bhagat, what are your tips to budding writers, especially women? So is there any special advice?
Well, you have to read a lot. You have to write. You have to make your writing good. It has to be interesting, guys. It has to be simple, and you have to get you have to get feedback from people. Very brutal feedback. I still do it. I've written so much, but whenever I write something, I'll make people read it and say, okay, guys, give me your feedback, and don't think that I'm this writer or whatever. Just do that. So that has made me better, and even till today I take feedback from some absolutely lay persons. So take a lot of write and show to people, and then get better and polish and get better. Edit, write, edit, read, write, edit. Actually, read a lot of things also. So read, write, edit.
Yeah. So another question that some of us, one of the things that we have been, as you sort of emphasizing at Alliance, is to talk about, the connection between the art and science, or just. So I would like to know if there are any thoughts you have about the fact that you have traversed these many disciplines. There is one sense in which we regret the fact that we were in one discipline by mistake, and we make amends for it later. But there's also a sense in which whatever we have read and whatever we are past, we see things as a whole, and maybe these things better connected. So is there some kind of a better vision that you feel you have access to, given your diverse experiences, like in engineering, management, now writing, everything? So
yeah, guys, I mean, listen, I mean, you have to all live your life by always putting yourself first. I'm kind of bringing some things out of my motivation talks now, but basically I'm saying what I've learned is you have to follow your own path. Even the previous question said parents was this. You have to make your own mistakes. You have to set yourself goals. You have to, if you want to live a life, you cannot just live it only to impress others or for the opinions of others. And unfortunately, when you're young, it's very difficult to live like that. When you're young, you always want to impress others. You're young, you're insecure, you're not like confident about your own position in life. So you always want others to say, my friend should appreciate me, my girlfriend should appreciate me, my boyfriend, my parents, my siblings, elders, cousins, whatever, should feel like I'm good. And then you spend your life just trying to get their approval, and it may come, it may not come. Usually it doesn't come, but you detract from who you are and what you really want. You have to figure out who you are. Like, I'll give you an example, right? I'm from a college where a lot of people have opened these mega startups. Like this IIT Delhi is like Zomato and Flipkart, and and I know many of the founders. I know founders of like the Flipkart, Ola, all these guys. I've hung out with them, and I sometimes feel like Okay, so maybe I couldn't have opened a $10 billion company, but maybe I would have done $1 billion or $100 million company. But then it's not me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to own a massive company and work in office all the time. I am just not that person. I don't want a building with my name on it on the top. I'm not. And I'm not judging people who do. There are people like that. I just want to live an independent life where I have enough money that I can live the way I want. But at the same time, I don't have an ego to, make an empire or palace. It's okay. And that is the honest truth. And I think that has happened because I've lived and I've now seen a lot of things. And I've realized that a lot of people just live their life trying to please others or at the direction of others or influenced by others. But you should live for yourself, because that's the only way to be happy. If you don't live for yourself, eventually something will go wrong and you will realize that many years have gone by and you're not living for yourself. So I live for myself. Some people may call it selfish or whatever, but no, I put myself first. It's not like I don't care for other people. So selfish is you only care for yourself. No, I care for myself first, and then I care for other people. It's like, if I'm happy, only then I can make other people happy. If you put your own oxygen mask before you put for others in a flight, it's the same theory. But a lot of people don't do that. And I think, I don't know whether you can teach it. I don't know which subject will this come in or whatever. We just have to learn this because it can't be taught in a subject. That I think that's what my experience has been. People are unhappy. In my batchmates, some of them, they're in banking, they're not happy. I've seen writers who are not happy. I've seen all kinds of people who are not happy, but doing things because they're not doing what they really want. So you have to live your life for yourself. Not just career, everything, relationships, health. Live for yourself.
Thanks, Chetan. We have another interesting question from the audience, which a student has asked, which something which somehow escaped my mind, because certainly that is common to the world of writing, whether it is you or anybody else. Basically, he talks about, how the problem of reducing attention span among the youth. And what I want to say to that is that it can be a simple book or it can be a complex book, but at least reading a book, or at least I'm telling you that I even struggle to make students watch a full movie these days. How to retain reading any book is a solitary exercise which requires a certain attention span. And given how that's kind of, in a way, reducing given the new medium. So in a way, that's probably detrimental to both, the enterprise of reading your books and also us, liberal arts, because we are also about reading and, learning through reading. So what is your response to that? Like, how do you solve that?
Reading is amazing, guys. And like, I 100% agree with you. Read any book, it's fine. Because you're not watching Instagram reels. You're not watching Instagram reels, and that's what, anything that keeps you away from the screen is good. And I think you should just pay attention to that. Reading is unique, that it builds your creativity, it builds your imagination, which is very useful in life, not just for, it's not just useful because it's for writers to be imaginative or for artists to be imaginative. No, reading is useful for your imagination, because if I tell you what do you want your life to be in 5 years, you should have a decent imagination to imagine that life. If you don't have a good imagination, you don't even know. Oh, maybe I can move cities. Oh, maybe I can be doing this. People who don't only keep watching screen and even reels and never read books, they have poor imagination, which means their own life, life progress, they can't even imagine the future nicely. Second thing the books do is they build focus and concentration, attention. They demand some attention, but once you do it, it's like you're practicing your attention muscle. And I think many people who read build that, and those who don't read won't. Like, watching things like Insta reels is really bad for you. I'm being very honest. It's really bad. It's 5-10 minutes, okay, but who stops at 5-10 minutes? Nobody does. Because it's bad, because only 30 seconds or less, and your brain is assaulted with something that is going viral, which means thousands of videos were there. The 3-4 that are circulating more are being, so that means the extreme thing, something you're not normal. So your brain is seeing very high stimulation. And then before it can really register it, another one and another one and another one. What do you think it's doing to your attention and focus powers? Because it's moving so fast. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. How do I read a whole page now? Because I just saw 6 kittens jumping on a bouncy castle, and then I saw a baby getting, tied to a balloon, and like all these kind of silly things. But why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? There are books. I'm not saying it because I'm a writer. I do everything, guys. There are podcasts. There are great videos to learn things. There are so many things you can do with your life. You're watching Insta Reels. Really? Why don't you just why are you turning your brain into jelly? So don't do it, especially when you're young. If you're retired, 70, 80 years old, nothing to do, okay, fine. But why are you doing this? Why aren't you reading? Because you're lazy? Because it's hard? How hard is it to get started reading 10 pages a day? But you are ready to waste hours and hours seeing reels. Why don't you just go to the gym? So it's these are bitter truths. These are I'm chief guest, so I have to be nice, but everybody watching here is like my younger brother and sister, and I care for you guys, and I'm telling you now because nobody else will. These big companies want you to watch these reels non-stop. Please don't do that. It's not good for you.
Another question that we have from Yashwant is like you, Chetan, I studied mechanical engineering, did MBA, wanted to be a movie director, but ended up entering the corporate world, as you rightly said. We need to earn money to run family. He says specifically, what is your message for parents who are also part of this session in encouraging their children to choose their choice of subjects? So what would you miss? Any message you have to parents, like what nudge would you give them towards liberal arts, hopefully?
Like I said in my opening remarks, life, you have to get it out of your head that engineers are the only people who are adding value, or there are so many so many different things to learn in the world, and the world is changing so much. For example, marketing and everything has changed so much. Now there was a time ad agencies used to make ads and put it on TV and put it in magazines. They don't do it now. It's all about Facebook promotion and Insta promotion, because everybody's there. So it's just things, and liberal arts education opens your mind. And I think an open mind is more important. You can learn things, guys. Anything can be learned, like technical things. But how do you learn to open a mind? And for that, you need a certain kind of education. And if especially if the child is showing interest towards that, then why aren't you doing it? It's not bad, It's not like it's not, So that's all I'll say. These are important subjects. This is also something that the world needs, humanity needs, and it opens your mind. So, and especially if your child is showing interest in it, why not?
Chetan, I don't think the spirit of this, you have always been a person who has taken lots of questions, and I don't think the spirit of this, conversation would be complete if we don't ask you a slightly provocative question, because it's come from a student. So, it's come from a host actually, a student host, Niharika. She says the chain is as strong as its weakest link, but it's perhaps not the thinker's duty to work on subjects that strengthen the link to general public, because no intellectual creation goes to waste just because the majority fails to meet its level, be it however elite. After all, elite is only the term of the ego, not that of the thinker. Comment. So this, I would just like, if you could please,
it's nice. I love it. I love it that your students are so.
And this is not from me. This is students. So.
No, and it's good. I really admire. Firstly, whoever asked that question, I really admire them for having such clarity of expression and challenging it, and that's fine. And I agree. And not there is nothing wrong in creating something and having knowledge that is not passed on to the every common person. It's not possible. Like, for example, do we all know how these corona vaccines work? We don't know. I mean, we kind of know that what to put and 2 doses and booster and all that, but we don't know mRNA vaccines or vectors and all that. We don't know the detail how the antibodies are made and all. We don't know, and that's okay. That doesn't mean the people who created them are. But elitism is an attitude. It's not the labeling. It's an attitude where you feel you're better than others. That should not be there. It's okay, Some things I understand that some things cannot be explained to everyone. Some things are not, and that's a communicator's job. And maybe I'm a communicator, so for me, that's more important. But if you create something, it should be, and if you think that I know something, I have some knowledge or I have some education, and therefore that makes me better than others, that's where I have an issue. And that's what's elitism, really. It's not about excellence. Excellence is good. Excellence by means doing better than others. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should have a communist, fully non-merit kind of society. There will be people who are smart. There will be people who will research. There will be people who are able to come up with very complex arguments and all these things. But that's fine. But if you think that you're superior because of that, because of your intellect, you're more superior to humanity, that's when it becomes elitist. And I think that should not be there. That's all. But everything has its place, yes.
Thanks a lot, Chetan, for graciously responding to that. And one question that we were all having is, in all your videos and everything, I would probably like to wrap up with this question because we are at a very tough time in India's economy. The kind of situation it is in. There are lots of pressing problems to solve, and you always talk about the urgency to solve problems and being solution oriented. But a bachelor's degree is also about just learning and getting your fundamentals right and exploring, right? So how do you think we can pass this message that we also can just explore the world of ideas, and sort of relax a bit, and before we get into this real world and immediately solve all the problems in one go? So if there's anything you could tell us on that, like if there's something that strikes you.
Like immediately solve the problem in one go, meaning?
Like, like basically the whole idea that there's this thing that goes on, rhetoric, that liberal arts is not, the prejudice against liberal arts is that it's not solution oriented. But liberal arts is also just a way of thinking, critical thinking and the ways of argument. So there is a kind of an anxiety that these things will not lead to immediately tangible skills or jobs or solutions.
Depends,
Whereas
no,
engineers,
it's
So-
content creation, for example, is huge. Everything is content now.
Yeah.
We are creating content right now.
Yeah.
As we are doing this,
that's
and it requires all kinds of people. You have to be careful. Yes, like I said, engineering is okay. Engineering, you have jobs, but at the same time, I'm sure it depends. Each course is designed in a way that you can eventually, become a thinking person, and you can be part of something. And there are many companies that value also. It's not every company doesn't always want an engineer. So there is a lot of fields that have come up which require all kinds of things. So I think employability is important, for sure. It is important, but it's not as bad as people think. Like, oh, it's not the job in nothing. That's not true. फिर तो सारे इंजीनियर बन जाएंगे.
Thank you, Chetan. I mean, it's been wonderful talking to you. We have covered a lot of things in a short span. I mean, I hope you get invited to more liberal arts universities. I mean, this is just the beginning, and you become a liberal arts icon, if you like, just like the youth icon you already are. So, it's been, you've answered all questions, sort of entertained all our students. So it's just good. I hope they go inspired, and, after this conversation, it was really, really nice, speaking with you. So.
It was absolute pleasure. Very rare that I get a chance to have such thought-provoking questions. Very different kind of session, guys. Thank you. Today you heard me here. You're most welcome to follow me on YouTube if you like motivation in your life. All the Alliance students, I want you to do well. And since you've heard me today, yeah, I want to, sometimes they say, okay, you did one session, iske baad kya hoga? Uske baad kaise motivated rahenge? So now some of this, of course, today, but the rest, yeah, come to my YouTube. You can keep watching there.
Sure. Thanks, Chetan.
Um,
I think we can- Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Bhagat, for such an interesting and enriching session. I truly enjoyed that. And thank you, Mr. Professor. Thank you, Professor Chakraborty, as well. We've come to the end of this eventful evening, but I want to add one last time that with excellence in teaching, research, and pedagogy, Alliance introduces the School of Liberal Arts to further its aim of providing a holistic education to instill values, skills, and knowledge to all of its budding thinkers, scholars, problem solvers, and leaders, allowing them to inspire in every walk of life and also to lead successful and meaningful lives. A very big thank you to our audience and to our guest of honor for making it a memorable one for all of us here at Alliance. Thank you so much.